Someone asked me to explain Bitcoin, and I realized I couldn't. Not properly. Not in a way that made any sense. If you've ever tried to explain Bitcoin and felt that gap, this is the part most people never fix. I had been in Bitcoin for 8 months. I had read the books, watched the videos, listened to the podcasts. I could explain the supply cap. I could talk about the halving. I had opinions on mining, nodes, and the Lightning Network. I thought I understood it. I didn't. I'm Sats, and this is the moment I had to start again from scratch. And this is more common than people admit, because knowing the words is not the same as understanding the thing. Let me tell you what the question was, because it sounds deceptively simple. I was at a family dinner. My cousin, who knows nothing about Bitcoin, asked me to explain it. Not the technical version, just the simple version. What it is, why it has value, and why anyone would want it. I started talking, and within about 30 seconds I could hear myself. The words were coming out, but they were not landing. I was using phrases I had absorbed from podcasts and articles without ever stress testing whether I actually understood them. Things like trustless system, peer-to-peer, and digital gold. I kept using analogies I had borrowed from other people without being able to say in my own words what they actually meant. My cousin looked at me the way people look at someone who is clearly saying something without saying anything. I changed tack and tried a different angle. That one was worse. And that's when I realized I had a problem. I sounded like I knew what I was talking about, but I couldn't explain it. If this is the kind of honest Bitcoin conversation you were looking for, the subscribe button is right there. I tried a third attempt, but eventually I said something like, "It's complicated, but basically it's a new kind of money that nobody controls." My cousin nodded politely and we moved on to something else. I drove home feeling genuinely unsettled, not because I had embarrassed myself, though I had, but because the experience revealed something I had been avoiding. I had been learning about Bitcoin, but I had not been understanding it. Here is the distinction that became important to me after that dinner. Learning about something means accumulating information. You read articles, follow discussions, and absorb vocabulary, arguments, and perspectives. You can repeat those arguments back in the right context, and you feel knowledgeable because you know a lot of things. Understanding something means something different. You can simplify it. You can explain it to someone with no context. You can answer unexpected questions without reaching for rehearsed phrases. You can say why something is true, not just that it is true. I had been doing the first. I thought I was doing the second. If you can't explain it simply, you don't understand it. You've just learned how to talk about it. The real test of understanding is not whether you can explain it to someone who already knows it. It is whether you can explain it to someone who does not, without relying on the vocabulary of the thing you are explaining. Try it. Explain Bitcoin in under 2 minutes with no jargon and no buzzwords. Just plain English. If that's hard, that tells you everything you need to know. If you find that difficult, you are in good company. I found it extremely difficult, and I had been following Bitcoin for the better part of a year. Here is what I think actually happened. Bitcoin content tends to be produced by and for people who already believe in Bitcoin. The vocabulary, arguments, and frameworks all exist inside a shared context that feels obvious once you are inside it. Spending time in that context makes you fluent in how Bitcoin insiders talk about it, without necessarily making you fluent in how a new person needs to understand it. So you end up knowing a lot about Bitcoin but being unable to explain why those things matter to someone who does not already share your assumptions. After that dinner, I did something that felt slightly embarrassing. I went back to the most basic materials I could find. Not for people who had been in Bitcoin for a while, but for people who had never heard of it. I reread things I had dismissed as too simple, and I found they were exactly what I needed. The understanding I built the second time around was slower to arrive and much more solid. It filled in gaps I hadn't even noticed were there. The practical takeaway is not that you need more information. It is that the quality of your understanding matters more than the quantity of information you have. Shallow understanding across many topics leaves you vulnerable in a way that deep understanding of a few core ideas does not. Can you explain what Bitcoin is in plain English without jargon? Can you say in your own words why it has value? Can you explain what a private key is to someone who has never heard the term? If yes, you are in a better position than most people who think they understand Bitcoin. If no, that is useful information. Not a reason to feel bad, but a reason to go back to basics and build something more solid. Let's lock this in. Having a lot of information about Bitcoin is not the same as understanding it. The test is whether you can explain it simply, to someone with no context, without relying on insider vocabulary. Yet, if you find that difficult, you are not behind. You are exactly where most people are when they actually test their understanding. Going back to basics is not a step backwards. It's the first time you actually understand what you're doing. And until you do, you're just repeating things that sound right. If you want to test your understanding of the most fundamental question in Bitcoin, the video on why Bitcoin has value is the place to start. Not because it is simple, but because it is the question everything else connects back to. Watch that next. Stack smart. Stay curious. See you in the next stack.